I'll call the meeting to order again. And I'd like to begin welcoming you all again, and also to turn the microphone over to Councillor Robinson because today's a special day, a little bit.
Thank you. Today is a special day. It's the first day of the Jewish holiday called Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year. And so to all of our residents who are Jewish in the community, I wish them a Shana Tova. And to the rest of you, I wish you a Happy New Year, too. For many people, they say that September feels like the new year. And it's the year 5773. And May can't believe she made it this far, which is great. Congratulations. And my wish for all of you is that it's a sweet year and that it's a healthy year, one filled with peace and joy. And for my colleagues, some good decision-making. Thank you.
Seems like only a couple of years ago it was 5770.
It was.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. First item on the agenda are the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, September 10th. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All in favor, opposed, carried.
Item 2 is a recommendation arising out of the council and committee meeting, and the recommendation is that the cost-sharing formula for local area services, curb and gutter, be changed to 60% property owner and 40% city.
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Reamer. All in favor, opposed, carried. Oops, Councillor O'Neill is opposed. The motion carries almost. Motion carries.
I think it's a great recommendation.
The next two items.
I think Councillor O'Neill was trying to be consistent.
The next two items arise out of tonight's public hearing. Item 3 is in relation to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4335/2012 for the properties at 953 to 969 Charland Avenue. The staff recommendation is that council give second and third readings to the bylaw.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, this is one that I struggled with because I do want to see the changes happening. I think the neighborhood plan is a good one, but I don't like the building. I think what struck me is that it looks like a number of other buildings that we're seeing being built, and given that this is supposed to be, I want to say, a more neighborhood center, it just feels like it's not the right building for the right place. So I'm actually, and given the parking coming into Charland, I actually do think it needs to come from Laval. I just think we can do a better job. So I'm actually not going to support it. I just don't think it's the right buildings, because I think they're really sort of like two buildings in the right place. So I'm not going to be supporting this one.
Okay, Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, when you're talking about revitalizing an area, here's a chance to revitalize an area. And that's what we're looking for. You know, I was against that high-rise at Austin and Blue Mountain. I still am against it because I don't think that area should be a bunch of high-rises, but certainly needs redevelopment. This looks like a very, very nice development, a development that can revitalize the area, and I think it'll be an improvement to the area rather than, you know, some people say that their property value is going to go down. No, your property value wouldn't go down. I don't believe that for 1 minute. And I think it'll be good development. Developers presented us the pictures of what is going to be there, and I can see that it's going to be a very, very nice development. I think that if we're going to have the redevelopment of that area, this is a great beginning, so I'll be supporting it.
Okay, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I like the building. It reminds me of some of the newer buildings that are being built in the Heights, in Burnaby Heights, along Hastings Street. I like the facade. I like the brick. There's a lot of little indentations, so it's not going to have one big, long, flat surface. I think the water feature is nice. My biggest concern is that the street gets finished properly to the appropriate width, and that we have a big discussion over access and egress onto Charland. I live that, and it's not fun. I do not think that people pouring out of the pub at night should be zooming along Charland. We're just asking for trouble, and I think we really need to take a good look at that. But as for the development, I'm not having a problem with it. Thank you.
You, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, I have to admit that when I first saw the drawings of the building in our package, black and white drawings, it didn't look very inspiring to me at all. It looked like two rather monolithic rectangles. However, tonight's presentation, which showed, and not only in color, yeah, I like things in color, but also we were able to identify the brick facades and things like that. Made a lot of difference. And then also the information, which isn't apparent looking at the sketches, that these streets along the blue, the units along the blue at the ground floor are open onto the street. There'll be all that interaction neighborhood, and the ones at the north side of the building open on as well. That there's all that activity. This is not your old style block apartment building that's kind of self-enclosed and no interaction with the street. This is taking into account a lot of the things that we like at City Hall here. And I think it is a pretty good development. There are some issues, and I think obviously that issue about the opening at Le Bleu is an issue. And yes, I would like to talk about it. I recall that even one of the speakers who spoke against this development admitted at the outset that it was a good development, and that reminded me of a phrase that I introduced at our last council meeting, and that's "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good." I think this is a very good development. Is it perfect? No, but what is perfect? I think this is by far good enough, so I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. I too am going to support this. I see it as the second step in the realization of the Austin Heights neighborhood plan. And while it may not be perfect, I think it is the direction that we need to move in. I agree with Councillor Reid that we need to take a serious look at the traffic flow in the opening of Le Bleu, and I don't want that just left hanging. I think that that needs to be dealt with, and possibly once the building is opened, a traffic study done or whatever we have to do. But I do support this. Thank you.
Councillor Hodge.
I think, you know, certainly it isn't perfect, and I think Councillor O'Neill raised a good point. What is? I think we should be striving for perfect. It's not, but it does address some of the things that we're trying to do in that neighborhood in terms of you know, choices of housing. It's not as high as it could be, so I suppose this is the transition. My biggest concern since we've started talking about the street is the opening of the street, and I think that really is going to need to be addressed, as that street. I've spent a lot of time on the city's traffic calming committee, and I know that when you connect two arterial roads, it's going to become a thoroughfare, and I think we have to look at whether or not there's a way to manage the traffic better, and just putting a half lane with a sign that says one way or do not enter isn't going to work at 10 o'clock at night, because people will scoot through there. So I think that the traffic does have to be managed in that neighborhood. This neighborhood, if this project goes ahead, and it sounds like it's going to, is going to see a lot more traffic just from the residents of this new development, and I don't think the residents on that street need to have traffic from outside their neighborhood. So I'm going to really be watching that one, because to me that was one of the things that I really don't like about this. I would have preferred the access on Le Bleu. I think coming in from the back in that corner would have been better, but again, that's not perfect. So I'm going to support it just based on that it achieves some of what we're trying to do in that neighborhood in the Austin Heights area. But I think that what we have to do is, and I've said this on all the developments, I worry about traffic and I worry about parking, and I think we have to make sure that there's parking on the street, that the residents who live there today aren't displaced from parking, and that we make sure that we try to minimize traffic on their streets because, you know, as I said, there's going to be an increase just from neighborhoods, and I think that's going to go for a lot of our developments in the Austin area. We have to just keep that in mind. So moving forward, it's not perfect, but I think it does achieve what we're trying to do in that neighborhood.
Yep. There are two elements to this. There is the zoning. The zoning is essentially established typically in a way that's consistent with the OCP. The OCP says this will be an apartment building at that kind of form, and south of that will ultimately be townhouses or some other attached product. So tonight our vote is actually on the zoning. It isn't on the development permit. The development permit allows a building that's 4 stories and it has brick and it has the break in the middle, and those sorts of things are the design elements of and where the underground parking goes and that sort of thing. The development permit will come back, and I suspect there will be some adjustments to it based on the discussions that we've had tonight. So I do want to thank those people who came out tonight and offered their opinions. Ultimately, I'm in favor of the zoning. The zoning says that there will be an apartment building here, and I think I didn't hear anybody speaking that said there shouldn't be. The challenge is with the details here. I agree with those that think that Charland can't go through. I can't imagine it being able to be made to work, so I'm interested in talking about how that could work. I just can't imagine it. But I'm also concerned about the and I heard the recommendation or the suggestion that perhaps this proponent be asked to, this developer be asked to curb and gutter the bottom side of Charland, the south side of Charland. And I look at the aerial photo here, and I see at least one property where the parking is perpendicular to the street, which actually is against the bylaw, but that's another issue. What really is, that home has 5 parking spaces in the 60-foot frontage, where they'd only have 2 if we curb and guttered. If we put a curb there, you can't park perpendicular anymore. There's at least 2 or 3 others where the parking is on the front yard to some degree. So be careful what you ask for, because you could end up with less parking. So I'm not suggesting that we go there, and I don't think staff we're going to make a suggestion that the proponent go ahead and curb and gutter the bottom. I think there is ultimately a pretty good building here. I look at it and I see that in the elevation that you see on the drawings in the development permit, effectively show a building that's very flat, but it isn't that way. It's articulated because that's unfortunately how architectural plans show things. I'm not as concerned about that, and I believe that the street trees and various other planting elements will help add to that articulation of the building face, and that ultimately will end up with 2 distinct looking buildings and a project that I don't think will be that long block that people are concerned about. But I do want to make sure, and as we approach the development permit, I do want to make certain that we've done enough on the articulation of this. I'm pleased, though, that there have been no requests for variances on the parking side. This isn't next to the SkyTrain route sort of parking variation areas we can do. So I don't know that we'll have the kinds of parking issues that people are describing, but we'll be wary of that as well. So I'm going to support it going forward. At this point, give it second, third reading. So are there any other discussion about it? Seeing none. The motion is second and third. All in favor? All opposed? Councillor Robinson is opposed. The motion carries.
Item 4 is the second item on this evening's public hearing agenda relating to the City of Coquitlam Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4333-2012 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4334-2012 for 1440 Dayton Street. The staff recommendation is that Council give second, third, fourth, and final readings to City of Coquitlam Citywide OCP Amendment Bylaw number 4333-2012. That Council give second, third, fourth, and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4334-2012. And third, that Council require the owner of the proposed subdivision to provide 5% cash in lieu to address the provisions of Section 941 of the Local Government Act.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is fourth and final reading of Subdivision and Development Servicing Amendment Bylaw number 4341, 2012. The staff recommendation is that council give fourth and final reading to the bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6, Heritage Alteration Permit at 830 Laval Square for Our Lady of Lourdes Parish. Staff recommendation is that council approve the signing and sealing of Heritage Alteration Permit, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the permit on behalf of the city.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Sikora. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Is this the only heritage church in Coquitlam, or do we have others?
Mr. McIntyre.
Through the chair, I believe this is the only one that's been entered into any of the inventories that I've seen. I can check on that and confirm back to council, but this is certainly the most recognized historic church in the community.
Okay. Is it possible? Is there a list? Is the inventory on our website?
Well, there's to the chair again, Council may recall, there's the Myardville inventory, which was done a number of years ago, and then there was an update that was done more broadly than that, and actually I think we circulated information to council on that. So I'd have to just go back and check. I don't believe there's another church on that, but I will check and I will let council know.
Well, I wouldn't mind getting a copy of the inventory if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Certainly.
Is this was this an unsolicited application? Was this an application that we asked them to make? There's a public policy objective that's being reached through it, and I just wonder if it's our request or...
No, Your Worship, it's actually at the request of the proponents, the church.
Well, what we end up with is a church that isn't wheelchair accessible, becomes wheelchair accessible, and has accessible washrooms, and I'm very pleased to see it happen, and so I just almost asked myself, I assume we charge them hefty fees for the right to do this work that we would really like them to do. Define hefty, he says. Okay. Anyway, I guess it's a moot point. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is authorization for issuance of development variance permit at 1325 Glenbrook Street. It would be appropriate for the mayor to call for speakers at this time.
Indeed, indeed. No, this is a development variance permit, which requires a little public hearing again. So are there any speakers to the issue of a development variance permit at this property? Are there any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
The staff recommendation is that council approve the development variance permit and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the permit on behalf of the city.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Sikora. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I'm just going through the report, and I noticed that they were turned down by the Board of Variance, and I just wanted to find out why were they declined?
Your Worship, the minutes don't often or don't always give the specific issues that the board may hold. Typically, it's in almost all cases where they don't find that there's a hardship condition.
It's the hardship piece. Okay, so it wasn't anything other than that. It was just the hardship.
I don't believe it
Okay,
was.
thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I had this conversation with our city clerk actually earlier. I asked him exactly the same question because I was wondering about the propriety of going to the Board of Variance and then starting a new process when the Board of Variance had declined the last process. So, but it did have to do with the fact that it wasn't a hardship issue, and therefore it really wasn't a Board of Variance issue. Right. So this is why the new process. Thank you.
Okay. You're all comfortable with that? All in favor? Opposed? The variance is granted.
Item 8 relates to the Embrace BC Arts grants for the Library Art Project. The staff recommendation is that council authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute an Embrace BC Arts engagement grant agreement for $35,000 to support public art at the new Coquitlam City Centre Library with the province of BC in a manner consistent with Bylaw number 4286.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, I definitely support this. It has the potential to really add to our new library. But I just want to put a little caution up here. We're going to be developing a work of art through a committee. And this committee is going to be coming up with recommendations and then giving these recommendations to an artist to somehow bring to life. I hope you understand what I'm talking about here, is that the committee kind of saying, directing what's supposed to be in a work of art, that goes away from my vision of what a work of art should really be. And the other clue to the potential difficulty here is that the library art project will be used as a tool to fight some very good to reach some good objectives, which is to examine the issues of racism, diversity, integration, and inclusion. But again, that absolutely signals that this is a piece of propaganda art that we're talking about. Now, propaganda is a loaded word, but in the technical, real meaning of propaganda, it is just anything that is designed to convey a particular objective or message. And some propaganda art can be fabulous. Picasso's Guernica, of course, the piece of propaganda art that decried the violence against the Basque village that was attacked before the Second World War, was a tremendous work of art, but it was a piece of propaganda art. And so it can turn out really, really well. But I just want to caution that when you got the combination of a piece of propaganda art, for a good cause, without a doubt, plus being essentially commissioned with the artist being directed by a committee, you've got the potential for pap and not art. Pap. You know the word pap? And okay. And I was thinking, it's $35,000. I hope that it's a good piece of art. But I'm not 100% optimistic that it's going to be, given these marching orders. So it's just a word of caution. I certainly hope it works out well. To promote all of these wonderful ideas, racism, diversity, integration, and inclusion, we could, of course, just install a Coke machine and play I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing in Perfect Harmony on a loop, which there's my idea, and I don't need $35,000 to do it. But that would have the same effect, of course. Yeah, it's installation art, of course. Anyway, those are just a little word of, not caution, because this is not the end of the world sort of issue, but it did raise my concern when I read these instructions. There are some nodding heads over there and some quizzical looks, and I'd like to hear what other people think about this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your insight.
Ready to go?
And thank you for that wonderful idea, actually. It's probably not worth the $35,000 that we'd be willing to pay for the committee. But this committee actually quite often weighs in on that sort of thing, and I'm not sure that any of the work of this committee ever would be called works of art. To the extent that architecture sometimes is art, and we often weigh in on architecture and try to make it better. I'm not certain that committees do that well, but I see Councillor Reid.
Well, I can't say that he plagiarized my thoughts, but darn near, because I'll tell you, when you get a committee that's going to try and create a piece of art that examines racism, diversity, integration, and inclusion, and how we can become more welcoming and inclusive, I don't know what the heck it's going to look like. But I'll tell you, I really want to see a drawing before they actually build it or mechanically make it or blow up a glass thing or plant a planter or whatever it's going to turn out to be. But this is a public building. The money has been given to us. And boy, I mean, if I just looked into Councillor O'Neill's mind, I can see all the wild things that could possibly be sitting on the lawn in front of the library. So that's a scary thought in the first place. So I have little difficulty with just letting this money go to a committee without us seeing it. I'm not, I mean, beauty and art is in the eye of the beholder, but I think there's got to be some bit of common sense and a bit of community pride that we would take in this piece. So I really would like to see it be, yeah, I know hold your hand over your eyes and cross your fingers is right, but I really think that before it becomes something that we should actually get to see the drawing. So that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the concern expressed by Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Reid. And I don't know, the question I have for staff at this point is, will there be a point at which this can come back to council for approval? I see that the artist is selected in a process consistent with the public art program plan endorsed by council on June 20th, 2011. So does that process allow this to come back to council?
Your Worship, if I could, a number of good comments there. In terms of the committee, I know when I reviewed the report before sign off, I was wondering about that myself. The way I read it, the way I interpreted it, and perhaps some of the other staff that worked more closely with the, because actually it was a bit of a staff team that worked on this can comment. My sense was that this was to draw on a number of people, volunteers, that would give their ideas, impressions, thoughts that the artist then would take away and work into some creation. It's not designed by committee. It was sort of my understanding. So, but the second thing was to, it's beautiful art, and the eyes of one person may not be in another's. So I understand that this whole process is consistent with our public art policy, but perhaps, I know Laurie's here, maybe she can speak from that. She's more knowledgeable in that area than I am. If council so wishes, I'm sure we can make sure that the final piece is brought back for council to review before you see it installed. But I'd ask Laurie to comment on that in terms of the public art policy we have.
And Your Worship, I can confirm that the public art policy that was approved by council does provide for opportunities for updates back to council so that you can see the evolving work and approve it before anything is actually created.
When I first saw this, I was actually very pleased about it. I know members of my Multiculturalism Advisory Committee are going to be involved, as well as board members from the library and the library staff. So I think this is a fabulous opportunity. I'm really looking forward to it. But I do understand the hesitancy of my council colleagues with respect to that sort of thing. Thank you.
And now we turn to Councillor Sikora for his views on art.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. The fact is that, you know something, here I am asking to vote for a $35,000 deal of a picture that's going to be, some art's going to be hung in a library.
It's better than no picture.
What is it going to look like? What is it going to look like? What is it? Is it going to be offensive to some people? So, you know, I think we have to have a policy that before we embrace something that, you know, some arts council or whoever wants to donate this item to the library or wherever it is in the city buildings, that we ought as a council to see what it is. I'm certainly can't support some that they're giving us $35,000, so I just should leap to the ceiling with joy. Am I or am I not? Because if it's something that's going to be offensive to a lot of people of our community, then I got a great problem. And if somebody tomorrow asks me, what is this $35,000 that you voted for? What is it going to look like? What am I going to tell them?
Supplies.
Well, I don't know, but, you know, it's a gift. So, you know, every gift should be, we should support every gift that's going to be given to us. So I cannot support it the way it is. I'd like to see what it's going to look like, and then I can maybe support it. Okay? But I can't vote for it at this particular time because I don't know what it is.
You just go supplies.
Okay, well, there's no chance we're going to get to see the artwork before we accept the grant to build the artwork. So that's typically going to be a challenge. But Councillor Robinson.
Okay. Oh, ye of little faith. We talk about community engagement, lack of community engagement, and so here's a project that's doing community engagement, and we're getting anxious before we even do this. And it's like, I have complete faith in our community and in the artists to work together to come up with a project that reflects the things that we want them to reflect. I saw it. So, I suspect part of it is we're anxious because the process scares us, and I think that's good that the process should scare us. I am surrounded by some people who aren't process people, and I get that. But this is community engagement at its heart, and I think this is a fabulous idea. Now, this idea of propaganda art I find absolutely fascinating. Is that like propaganda journalism?
Propaganda is propaganda. I'll define it for you.
No, it's okay. It's good. I'm good. But I'd like to believe that we have some good critical...
He's got a definition right there.
This man does research like this tomorrow. Okay, it's about influencing attitudes of a community towards some cause or position.
There you go.
So one would argue that anything that our friends over there who write for local paper all write propaganda, because it's about influencing. So, and that what we do is propaganda, it's about influencing. So I don't want to get into that, but what I do want to point out that I thought was very interesting, because I did my own little bit of research in preparing for this, and what caught my attention, again on the Twitter feed, because that's where I get my most up-to-date news, was the evening of Rosh Hashanah, which is the holiday that started last night. In Winnipeg had tremendous anti-Semitic posters that were put up towards their mayor, who's Jewish, Sam Katz, that were horrific. And what it said to me was, as I read this article in CBC News World, was that apparently Winnipeg has had some real challenges. And I think that we all have to do whatever it is we can to not allow that to happen in our community. You can call it whatever you want, but I think that makes it really hard for people to live equally in the community. So if engaging people to celebrate the diversity that we have and find ways to do that, if you want to call it propaganda, that's fine. If you want to call it art, that's fine. If you want to just call it a celebration or community engagement, I think that's fine. But ultimately, the product, it's what's the outcome? Well, the outcome is we have community engagement, we have something that will provide comment, that will stimulate critical thinking, that will stimulate discussion. Whether it's beautiful or ugly, in some ways it doesn't matter. If it's going to stimulate people to think, then that's a good thing. And that's what I'm supporting, is that idea that we will have an interesting piece of art to talk about for years to come. And I think that's what it's about. I also was on council when the interactive art, public art for Mackin Park came to fruition. And the comments around the council table about that piece, I'm thinking we are not known, or our strength is not about public art as a group. I don't think we... Now, Councillor Hodge and Councillor O'Neill weren't there at the time, but it was very interesting, the comments that we all had. And I actually think it's a pretty interesting piece of public art that stimulates conversation and some interaction. It does its job, and I would not trust us to say yay or nay, actually. I'd prefer to leave it to the community. Thank you.
Well, it looks like we're not going to be unanimous, but we wouldn't have been unanimous if we'd have got a chance to look at the art first about it anyway. Well, we will, but okay. So, on the staff recommendation, all in favor? Opposed?
Do you opposed? Yeah, I want to take a look at it first. Okay.
Councillor Sikora.
Very simple.
Councillor Sikora is opposed. He wants to have a look at it first. The motion carries.
Just keep voting because somebody's going to give us $35,000 for something.
We're going to get to look at it.
Well, that's good.
We'll get to look at it, but okay. Madam Clerk.
Item 9 relates to the application for a liquor primary license for the Famous Players Limited Partnership VIP Lounge and Cinemas at the SilverCity Coquitlam Complex located at 170 Schoolhouse Street. The staff recommendation is that Council, having given consideration to the potential impacts to the community and the public comments received, either support or not support the application. and that the report of the city clerk be forwarded to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch.
I'll move B.
B is moved by Councillor Sikora, seconded by Councillor Reamer. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 10 is the 2013 council meeting schedule, and the staff recommendation is that council approve the 2013 council meeting schedule.
Moved by Councillor Reamer.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Reid. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I think that we need to maybe get together as a council and take a half an hour or so and talk about what is it that we've gone through the last few years as far as the committee system is concerned and the council meetings are concerned. Last meeting, we started, I think it was at 12 noon. We didn't get through to about 10 o'clock at night. Didn't even had about a 10-minute break for dinner, which is outside ridiculous. Today, we started 12 noon. We're still here, which is, awfully long hours. And I think that we ought to think about it. How can we streamline this kind of operation? And I think there's many ways that we can do it. We have a committee, where we have these 2 o'clock meetings. I think we need to go think about maybe a structured committee system, and which would work probably a lot better, and not have these long, outdrawn meetings. I don't mind sitting here for 10 and 12 hours straight, but I don't think for 1 minute that anybody's mind works perfect after you've been sitting for 10, 12 hours straight without any half an hour break or whatever it is. And I think that, I know we're elected to represent the taxpayers, and we want to represent the taxpayers. But there's sometimes, and I know we're a growing community and everything else, but there's also the silliness that comes into it. These type of meetings that go on from, and matter of fact, last meeting, Mayor, the fact is we started at about 12 noon, we finished about 10 o'clock at night, and we didn't finish half the agenda. Or matter of fact, a lot of it was reverted to this meeting, and so on. We finally scrambled and went to overtime when we should have started the public hearing. Tonight, we went to beyond 7 o'clock in a committee talking about the in-camera items. I think that it's, something that we need to think about it, Mayor. I really do think that there's many ways of streamlining this kind of operation. I've been on the council now for 40 years, and I've sat on every chair of every committee. I was a mayor of this city for 18 years, and there's many ways that we can streamline this operation, that the council members don't have to put in these 12-hour days steady without even a break. And so I think that we need to table this item. So I'll move a tabling motion until the council members can get together and see what is it that we should do.
Okay, I don't hear a seconder on the tabling motion.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Hodge.
And if I can speak, Mayor, we have 2 new council members that got just sworn in a year ago, not quite a year ago, so they haven't seen both sides of what it is. And you can explain it to them, but they wouldn't really grasp it or what it really is or how it can work. But believe me, if you tried the committee system, it'd be a lot easier on the council. Matter of fact, with the system that we are here now, we're so far drawn away from our taxpayers, that's not even funny. I mean, there's things that I had coffee with a couple people this morning, breakfast with them, and I learned a whole lot that the sports people are missing in this community. That's not working. And why? Because of the structure. We have a committee of people, sports people that are meeting together without any person that's on council. And it's not coming to us.
That's not true.
No, hold on. I'm not talking about that committee. There's the other one, that the sports people meet together every 3 months or so.
We can't prohibit the sports people from meeting.
I know. I'm not saying that you should prohibit it, Mayor. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying the fact is that if this was shared at a committee, not of people in the community, the chair and the vice chair of council to sit on a Parks and Recreation, one on Public Works, and one on land use, a committee on land use, like we had a few years ago.
Last year.
The only problem with that was that we had the same chairs for 3 years in each one of these committees. I think it's wrong. The first year, I was a chair of land use, and I said, give it to somebody else. Why did I want to give it to somebody else? For somebody else to get some experience. I'm sure that there's other council members that could have done the same job as I did. I wouldn't have wanted to sit there for 3 years. I think it's wrong. I think every council member should have a right to chair a committee during their 3-year term to see what kind of job they're doing and whether they're doing a good job or a bad job. And that would show up in a hurry. And that's the only reason I think that we should go back to the committee system. And I can't speak any harder on this system because I don't like the system that we're going in now, because we seem to be always rushing to try and get into the open meeting, always rushing. And at that time, we've already put in 10 hours, which is not right. So that's my vision.
We were going to wait till the other council members got here, I thought.
Yeah, we should wait till all the council members are here, and we have a discussion for about half an hour.
I know, but we can't do that anymore. There's a tabling motion on, and it's not actually debatable. He did debate it, but do we want to actually have a vote now on the tabling motion? Seeing no others, one other. Councillor Robinson on the tabling motion.
I do appreciate that this would be a good conversation to have with the other councillors. I'm fine to do that, and I will debate Councillor Sikora at another time.
Okay. Because you actually can't debate them now. So right now, we've got a tabling motion on the floor. All in favor of tabling this item? All opposed to tabling this item? Okay. So we're going to table it. We don't get to do anything with it now until staff report back on the conditions that Councillor Sikora did. I don't think that's what you meant. I think you meant to have another vote after this to refer it to adjourn it to another time. So we're sort of stuck now. Madam Clerk.
That concludes the items on the agenda.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. As is our practice, we'll allow a question period of up to 15 minutes. Are there any questions from the audience on tonight's agenda? Any questions on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.